Um, so we have other participants. Do we want to introduce ourselves, or should we just go into the workshop proper?
I think people are often confused about whether to speak or not. So you can call, I think Cynthia, you just unmuted your mic. But then after Cynthia, Aisha, you can just ask anyone that you see on the list to introduce themselves.
Oh, okay. So Cynthia, do you want to go?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia Nwajobi. I'm joining in from Enugu State. I'm a screenwriter and a film producer. I've done 2 short films. I produced 2 short films this year, and I'm currently working on a web series. So I joined this screenwriting workshop so I can learn more. Like I always, whenever I see workshops for writer screenwriting, I always like to jump on it. Like there's always something new to learn, at least from your experiences and your process. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, Cynthia. So Blaze, do you want to go?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Blaze Itodo. I'm a photographer and an aspiring writer. I saw this online and I felt it was an opportunity to learn, so that's why I'm here. Nice to be here.
Welcome, Rhoda.
Hi everyone, my name is Rhoda. I am joining in from Abuja. I am not a writer, at least maybe not yet. I am curious about screenwriting. That is why I am here. So I'm looking forward to the session and interacting with everyone. Thank you.
Welcome. Gloria, do you want to go?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Gloria Pata. I'm in Abuja. Okay, so I'm not a writer yet, though I have some drafts. I wouldn't really call myself a writer now, but I do hope to start writing seriously. And that's why I joined this, so that I could get the lessons and hope to implement them as I go along. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to have you here. Simi.
Hi, my name is Simi. I'm joining here from Abuja as well. I'm a writer and journalist, and I also do a bit of playwriting. So I thought it'd be really interesting to learn more about screenwriting. So thank you for having this workshop.
Thank you for coming. Have we heard from Onye?
Okay, hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Onye. I'm not a writer, but I'm always open to learning, so that's why I'm here today.
Hi, Onye. I don't know if there's anyone we've left out. You can just introduce yourself before we proceed.
Hi, I'm Chioma Diru, a screenwriter. I was so excited when I heard Aisha was the one coordinating, so that's why I'm here, just to learn some more. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think that's everyone. Is that everyone? Yeah, so I think so. So we're starting with screenwriting, and first of all, the last thing we're actually going to talk about in this workshop is the technical aspect of screenwriting, because before you open your laptop and get to final draft and start writing your script, there's a lot of background work that we hope that we have done, so that we don't start writing our script and then 50 pages later we realize that we're probably telling the story that we don't want to tell, or we're telling the story from a wrong POV, or just different faults that we don't want to find out when we've gone too far. So first of all, what is screenwriting? Screenwriting is basically writing for screen as opposed to writing for radio or writing for stage. So if you're writing for radio, you know that generally medium is not visual, so it's strictly audio. If you're writing for stage, there is a degree of, do I say, difference between how you can interact with your audience on stage and how you can interact with your audience via screen. So with screenplay, you are doing with a lot of, your story is more visual, right? So I'll give an example. When you're watching a stage play, there are some little movements you can't see, like if a character is sweating or if their hands are shaking, you can't really see that. So stage plays tend to be more overt. So if two people are having a confrontation, there's going to be a lot of movement, there's going to be a lot of words. But with screenplay, you can afford to tone down a little, you can afford to zoom in, you can afford to see those little things. So with screenplay, your strength largely is your ability to tell a visual story. So when you decide that, okay, you want to tell a story, the first thing we would ask is, I guess, where do stories come from? I'm hoping this workshop would be as interactive as possible. So I want to ask, where do we think stories come from generally, or where do the stories that we have told so far, where did they come from? You can just raise your hand if you want to say something. Okay, so I think Essay wants to say something.
Yes, I think they come from our experiences and our imagination.
Okay, yeah, most times, I mean, there's a thing they say that there's nothing new under the sun. So most times the story that you are telling is something that has either happened to you before, has happened to someone else, or is a, do I say, reimagination of something that has happened somewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are stealing the story. It means that we are borrowing from our experiences. So generally, there are 7 kinds of story archetypes. These are, first of all, a lot of what I'm saying is not set in stone. It's just the whole idea of, I guess, understanding what is obtainable and then knowing how you want to bend the rules, or I guess, blur the lines. So we have 7 main story archetypes. It's basically your overcoming the monster. In overcoming the monster, well, there is a monster and our protagonist, our main character, has to overcome that monster. We'll go into the details of your protagonist and who your protagonist is and who your antagonist is, but I want to just start broadly from our types of stories before we go into like structuring our stories. Another kind of story archetype is rags to riches. Typical someone who wasn't, it doesn't necessarily have to be about money, but basically a character who wasn't taken seriously, and then the character grows to becoming someone of significance. I think we can think in terms of, say, Happy Feet, or the underdog story, where you have a character who has lost like 1,000,001 fights and eventually wins that one fight that matters and gives that person some kind of, not some kind of, a great deal of relevance in their field. The quest, our character goes on some kind of, I don't want to use the word journey so it doesn't confuse the next story, but basically our character is trying to get something. We're thinking Harry Potter. For the voyage and return, our character goes somewhere, and the question is, will the character ever come back home? So a classic example is Alice in Wonderland or Wizard of Oz. There's a very good example in the Nigerian film, which is Day of Destiny, where the guys decide to, you know, go back in time, and at every point in time, we are wondering if they will ever come back home. We have comedy, series of funny events, tragedy. The main thing with tragedy is our character wants something and the character most likely will not get what they want. So Romeo and Juliet. For Rebirth, we have a character breaking free from a dark spell. The easiest way to think about Rebirth is to actually think about a dark spell. So maybe in the Nigerian film where a man is under some kind of jazz and then eventually he, you know, breaks free from that jazz and everything. It's a lot of the time, when we think of like spiritual stories where there is a spirit somewhere, especially in Nollywood industry, we tend to, yes, yeah, we can. Oh, yes, is there a slide for this class? No, there isn't, but I intend to email my notes to you when we are done. So yes, I hope that helps. Yeah, so I was saying that with Nollywood, a lot of the time when we do that, it might get a bit, do I say, underwhelming or disappointing, but it's just to say that if it's done well, it's actually a very valid form of story. We can also talk about story genres, action, thriller, romance, comedy as well. So once you have an idea of the story archetypes, the genre, and basically the, do I say, the pattern you want to adopt with telling your story. Again, it's art, so it's very broad, and I always like to say that there are really no rules, but this is basically a guideline so that you know what rules to break and what rules to, you know, help guide you, especially if you're a first-time writer and you kind of want to know what you want to do and why versus just, you know, freestyling, which if it works for you, it works. So when we have that, we then go to our story structure. It's how do I put it? It's kind of like a graph of your story. It's how you want emotions to play out. It's how you want actions to play out. I feel this is the most important aspect of your storytelling before you actually write your script. And I'm going to dwell on this part a bit. So when we talk about story structure in its broadest sense, we have the 3-act structure, which is beginning, middle, and end. Beginning, we establish our character wants something. In the middle, the character has trouble getting it. At the end, the character gets it or doesn't get it, or realize that there's something more important. And so it's always some kind of closure as far as the story is concerned. So even if it's a story that is going to have part 1, part 2, part 3, or as many parts as possible, as wherever one ending is, there has to be some kind of closure for our stories, our characters' journey. So while we have that broad graph, there are also tools that help us, do I say, execute it in detail. There are many tools, but for me, with experience, I like to talk about Freytag's pyramid. So Freytag's pyramid takes this 3-act structure and further breaks it down into 6 parts. But before we talk about, like, before we go into Freytag's pyramid in detail, we want to get better acquainted with our characters. So for every story you are telling, you have a protagonist. And our protagonist is our central character. It's the character who we care about the most. It's the character whose trajectory we are following. It's the character who his or her actions affect the world he or she is in, or it's the character who is most impacted by whatever is happening in our story world. That character then has a goal. Our character's goal is external. It's what they are pursuing, it's what they want. However, as it is with almost all human beings, beside our conscious goals, we have unconscious or subconscious needs. So I'll give an example. If we have a character who is trying to build a house and they're putting all their energy into trying to build that house, there's the money they're saving, there's the things they have to deprive themselves of. We know that this is what the character wants. And in the course of telling our story, the character is going to have obstacles as far as getting that goal is concerned. But right beside that conscious goal, there's an unconscious need. And it is kind of what that goal represents. So for that character, wanting to build that house could actually stem from the subconscious need to want some kind of stability in his or her life. So maybe they grew up with a family that was always moving, they were always moving houses, they were always relocating and everything, or maybe they just were homeless and they had to move from one family's house to the other. So if you were to have a conversation with this character, the person will not tell you, I want stability or I want some form of permanence in my life, but they will tell you they just want a house. And so what makes this really work for you in storytelling is if you are able to communicate to the audience. So it's a thing of the audience knows what the character doesn't know. So for every time the character has hiccups trying to get this house, the audience understands that it is beyond frustrations of trying to get the house, but it is also frustrations of trying to achieve that subconscious need of stability. Again, most times our subconscious need is an emotional thing. So they either want love or family, or they're trying to heal. So there's that. Now we have our antagonist. Our antagonist is not always a villain. So a villain is someone who is just a bad guy, right? Sometimes our antagonist is someone who in their own right is a regular person who isn't trying to be bad for badness sake, so to speak. I also advise us to think of protagonists and antagonists, not in terms of who is good and who is bad, but in terms of who is our central character and who is this other person who wants something that is going to conflict with what our central character wants. A classic example is an election. If John is running for president of Nigeria and Jack is running for president of Nigeria, John and Jack are not enemies in the intimate sense of it. They just have two opposing goals which conflict. So for everything John does to pursue his goal, it is going to inadvertently affect Jack's own goal. But of course, we have villains as well. And then the thing with villains is that your villains also, even though you have put them out there as the bad guys, you also have to, create a fair argument for them. So it's not just some non-entity just going about being wicked. We think of Thanos in the Avengers, where as far as Thanos is concerned, he has good reasons for wanting to do what he wants to do. I mean, granted, he's going to wipe off half of the world, but to himself, he's not doing something bad. He's actually doing something right. So I always say that Thanos is, like, for me, the perfect villain, because if you have a bad guy who you are able to empathize with, then I think you've done your job. So in our point of attack, we want to establish who. Oh, yes. So now we're going to phrase tag. We know who our protagonist is now, and we know what they want. We know who the antagonist is. We know that the antagonist wants something that conflicts with what the protagonist wants. And so what ties all these two people together is conflict. There's no drama without conflict, and there's no conflict that does not bring drama. So as long as we have two people who we know are always going to, at some point, butt heads with each other, we know that there's potential for drama. I'm going to use an example with Breaking Bad. I'm still watching Breaking Bad. So we start off with these two men who are on the same side. And it's fun, but the moment we start to see that they start wanting different things, I think for me as a viewer, that was when it got really exciting, because I'm like, oh my God, these guys are now on opposite ends. So it's not most times a conscious thing. Actually, as a viewer, you do not know all the amount of work that has gone on in the background. But when you watch all those things, at that moment where you realize that, oh my God, these two people are about to be enemies, it gets exciting. And that is what really that is why conflict is important, really, because of the potential and the promise of drama. So now that we understand those key parts of our story, we then go to Freytag, back to Freytag. So for Freytag, we have 6 elements, largely. We have our point of attack, we have our inciting incident, we have the rising action, crisis of choice, falling action, and our resolution or our cliffhanger. For our point of attack, that is where we introduce our world and the characters that live in our world, especially our central character who is our protagonist. So in the point of attack, we are not saying that there are no problems or challenges. We are saying that we meet these characters dealing with the problems or challenges that they are used to. So if one were to tell my story, for example, starting from today, as at today, I have problems. There's the exchange rate, there's the, many things that could be a problem when you're a Nigerian living in Nigeria. But these are things that, as far as today is concerned, they are not new to me, basically. But then when you want to introduce an inciting incident, the inciting incident is something that rocks our character's world, that creates a change that is so drastic that the character almost seems like the character is losing control of their life, or yeah. So again, I'll use Breaking Bad as an example. We have this man who is a teacher, he has a wife, they are not the richest people in the world, but these are all things that, he's been doing that for a while. But then he finds out that he has cancer. And that knowledge, that realization of finding out that he has cancer changes his world so grandly that eventually it even becomes more than the cancer. I'm trying not to give spoilers because I want to assume that there are other people here who haven't watched Breaking Bad. But yeah, so it's that thing where it changes our character's world, and then it leads us into our rising action. Our rising action is the series of steps the character would take to try to go back to the norm, to try to go back to status quo. So it's called rising action because it's action that builds. One action leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. And they all have increasing consequences. So I'll give an example. Say a woman finds out that her husband is cheating on her. And in a moment of, rage, whatever, she decides to go and confront the other woman. She gets there and finds out that the other woman is dead. And so she flees from the crime scene, doesn't call the police, nothing. And then police investigation starts, and then they're like, oh, security cameras, and then they find this woman leaving the crime scene. And the question is, what were you doing there? And then they find out that this woman knew that this girl was sleeping with her husband. So there is motive. And so we find that this woman whose life started with her just being a married woman, trying to live her best life, she starts to make decisions because she's going to try to escape the police. She's trying to maybe even start by proving her innocence, and then she's going to start trying to escape. And if that can build and build and build, with stories, you can go anywhere. We can choose to, well, maybe not choose. The stories can lead you anywhere. And so what if eventually this woman, in the process of trying to escape, actually then commits murder? So you see how a woman who started at the initial point of having the problem of a cheating husband has gotten to the point of being a wanted murderer. And so it's how little things can roll and roll and roll and become something really big. And so at the height of your rising action is where you have your crisis of choice. With the crisis of choice, your character is basically choosing between two very difficult things. And what really helps, or what really serves our purpose when we get to the crisis of choice, is if the audience knows something that the character doesn't know. So I'm going to give two examples. One is with the subconscious need. most times the character doesn't know that they have this subconscious need, or at least they won't admit it to themselves. But if you have done a good job with your character development and your world building, the audience knows. So when they get to that point when they're making this decision, the viewers are wondering, oh my God, what will they pick? So I think the movie is Twins, I'm not sure, but this man he's pursuing money, I think $5 million, and he's pursuing the money, and eventually he gets it. But then at the moment where he gets the money, someone has a gun to his brother's head and says, give me the money or we will kill your brother. For the journey we have followed this character through, we know that this character has been driven by his need for money. But then we also know that subconsciously, this character also wishes for some kind of family. So we know that it's going to be a very difficult decision for this person, choosing between the money and his brother. Eventually he chooses his brother, but then eventually he gets, well, try not to give spoilers as well. But then we find out that in him choosing his brother, we're able to appreciate that this character has grown. And it's the same thing about character wants something, has trouble getting it, and may eventually realize that what he really wants is something else. Because at that point, he realizes that he has wanted his money for so long, but what is more important to him is his brother. Another classic example is, so let's say we are in 2021 and we are watching a movie and we see this character who has maybe 10 units of Bitcoin and they're going to sell everything off for maybe 50,000 naira a piece. Because the audience knows now what Bitcoin is going to become or what Bitcoin is, of course, they're going to be like, oh my God, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But the character doesn't know that. So it's that thing where you're like, it's a tense moment because it's the same reason why you see people shouting at their television or when you see people, praying for characters or something. It's because we have been able to get the audience to that point where they are not only invested, but they know something that the character doesn't know. Or the same thing when you see Peaky Blinders, for a very long time, Thomas was sleeping with this woman who was actually informing on him. And it was a beautiful romance to watch. But what even made it more, dangerous was the fact that we knew who he was and what he was capable of, and we knew who he was sleeping with. So we're at the crisis of choice, and the character picks between A or B, the devil and the deep blue sea, a rock and a hard place. And so that leads us into falling action. Falling action is basically the fallout of every choice that this character, the fallout of this big choice that the character has made. And that leads us to our resolution or our cliffhanger. I want to talk about, so if you are to differentiate between a resolution and a cliffhanger, most times a resolution is just the story ties up neatly, everyone goes home happy or unhappy, but we know that this story has concluded. But for a cliffhanger, it gives us some degree of closure and also a promise of more. It's the way they do like post-credit scenes where the story has ended, but then you see some guy who is supposed to have been dead and he's still alive, or they finished fighting this great big monster and then the story ends and you're happy, but then you see a little maybe egg hatching or something, and you know that the story continues, So that's that for Freitag from the beginning to the end. I don't know if we have any questions so far, because we're about to take a short break with a task and continue. So I think if we have questions, let's run through them before I give you the task. So you can raise your hand. Okay, TJ.
Okay, no, I was just going to ask. There are some aspects that, of course, like arranging the structure, the story structure, and I see how it's very important to establish this before having the script. The other aspects, like this rising action and all of us, especially for those of us who are coming from writing fiction, should we have all these things that you have mentioned in place before proceeding with the story?
When you say proceeding with the story, do you mean proceeding to script it?
Yeah, yeah, proceeding to script it. I see, like, you mentioned, having the story structure, and also I think this is also inside the question I'm asking. Is it important to have like the number of episodes or the time lapse or the amount of time you want the film script, or is it important to have those structures established before you start scripting the story?
Yes. So I say it's
Okay.
important because at some point, so for example, my first feature film script, I wrote it I just opened my laptop and I started writing. And then by the time I got to the end, I realized that there were scenes that were completely useless. And there were scenes that were, do I say not practical? So I'll give an example. Say me and TJ just had coffee in Lagos yesterday. And then the next day we are seeing TJ in America. So even though we want to argue that, oh, TJ is a secretive person and he didn't tell me and all of that, it's an assumption because we did not portray you to be a secretive person. So the reason I'm saying we need to have all those arranged is because you don't want to start scripting and realize at that point that you do not have a character with a clear goal. Because of how visual script writing is, if your audience does not see it, it doesn't exist, right? So if we have a character that is secretive, if your audience does not see that this character is secretive, if maybe 1 hour into the film, the character then does something really secretive, you're like, I don't understand, where is this coming from? Also because most times, unless you are funding your film by yourself, you are going to need to pitch that story to someone. And if you do not have a clear idea of where your story is starting from and where it is ending, you are not going to convince that person to invest or put their money into that. And we know that the filmmaking industry costs money, right? So yeah, I hope that answers your question. The reason why you want to know how many episodes you have, because you want to know how to pace your story. So if you have the space of 10 episodes, you know that, okay, if you have just 10 episodes, you need to be faster. If you have the luxury of 20 episodes, you can afford to maybe pace it slower, afford to have maybe more characters, more locations if the money is there. But as far as series are concerned, you always have to know the amount of episodes from the beginning to the end before you start scripting.
Thank you. That answers my question.
All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you're writing, let's say like maybe mystery or like stories where kind of part of the plot is being unpredictable, and maybe like a thriller where the audience know what happens next. How do you kind of build the script where you're able to withhold information without confusing the audience or make it so that they're still invested?
Can you ask that question again? I think I missed some part of it.
Yeah. So when you're writing, like, let's say a mystery or a thriller, and you're trying to build like the structure of the story, how do you
slower? I think
talk slower.
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So when you're writing like a mystery or a thriller, how do you create a structure or a plot where you're able to withhold information to keep it kind of like suspenseful without confusing the reader or making them lose interest in the story?
Oh, okay. So with I think with thrillers largely, the one skill you want to use is, one tool you want to use is foreshadowing. So foreshadowing could even be, okay, so I'll give an example. If you're watching a horror movie and the moment the soundtrack changes, you know that something is about to happen. But that's for like directors and everything. But for a writer, you use foreshadowing to show where you plant something. And if you do it well enough, it's not so obvious that it is right in front of the audience, that they are so preoccupied with it. But it's something that they consider and they're like, interesting. So that if maybe 10 minutes later it has a payoff, it makes sense. So it's the same thing with, so let's say, I'm trying to think of a movie where, oh, yes. Umbrella Academy. I know that's not really thriller, but I think, well, in Umbrella Academy, we have Vanya, who we know is, hope I'm not giving you guys spoilers, I'm sorry, but I have to use this as an example, I'm sorry in advance. We have Vanya, who we know gets, like when she gets angry, she's like an atomic bomb I mean, worse than that, right? And so in the scene where we've already seen what she's capable of, I think that was after she slit someone's throat with her, whatever the stick is for playing her instrument. And then this guy comes and he's insulting her and throwing insults at her and everything. So now, you have not given us too much information that we can predict what will happen, but we have enough information that we are worried about the situation that this guy has put himself in, where he's insulting her and throwing insults and calling her weak and everything. And then she loses it just as we were afraid she would. And she kills him. And it's a very beautifully gruesome death. So with that, it's once you're able to get the audience to understand the things that are at stake, what your character is capable of, or I mean, even in, I'm trying to remember this movie, classic serial killer movies where we know that this guy kills blonde girls. The moment we see him flirting with a blonde girl, we know that something is about to happen. So even if nothing happens at the end of the day and the girl gets away, you've given the audience that adrenaline rush, that shock, that fear, that worry. And we're asking ourselves, is he going to come back for her? Is she going to come back and look for him? Is he going to eventually kill her? And yeah, I think with thrillers, as long as you're able to get your audience to ask those questions of, oh, is this going to happen or not? Then I think you're able, you keep them interested without giving them too much.
Thank you.
So it's possible that we don't have any more questions for now.
My question is not.
Oh, okay.
My question is not practical to the session, but like I just love the way that you have these movie references for every example you want to give. So I'm asking, like, to be a good screenwriter, do you have to watch a lot of movies? Do you think it helps?
Yes, you do actually. I took a 2-week screenwriting course, and in the 2-week space, I think they had recommended like 50 movies for us to watch. And I mean, some will be interesting, some you'll be watching like, why am I watching? But yeah, you have to watch movies, yeah. Okay, Choma Diru, I see your comment. Yes, I agree. It's actually very painful because at that point, it's like you already have tunnel vision, so it's hard to even pull back out and start all over again. So I want us to take a 10-minute break. It's a break with a task. So yeah, you do. You have to read a lot of scripts too. Yeah, we'll actually go to that when we come back from the break. So the task is basically to identify one movie or one TV show that you really liked. Tell us the protagonist's goal, the antagonist, and what stood out to you about the movie or the TV show. We might not be able to go through everyone, so maybe like the first 3 to present, and we'll just go with that because it's going to be our reference point for our next topic. So it's 11:47 now.
Sorry, can you state the assignment again?
Okay.
Can you say it a second time?
Okay, so basically pick one movie or a TV show. One, I are going to identify who the protagonist is, what the protagonist's goal is. It doesn't have to be one goal. Protagonists can have many goals, but the one that stood out most strongly, who the antagonist is, and what stood out to you about the movie or TV series. I'm just going to go ahead and type it here as well, so that in case you need a point of reference. Oh. So can we be back by 11:58?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Are we back?
Auntie.
Hi, Essie, I like your background.
Thank you.
I wish I had thought of that. So, okay. Hi, Chama. Augusta, do we continue?
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. So Essay, you are unmuted. Choma, you're unmuted. Does any one of you want to start?
Yes, the ladies first.
Okay. I picked a movie, Life of Pi. It's one of my favorite books and movie. So I think the protagonist is Pi, Pisen. His goal was to survive. The basic story is he was shipwrecked and that's correct English. Well, he basically was lost at sea for a very long time and he had to survive and it's salty water, so he has to get clean water, fish, eat, and not die. And then the antagonist is Richard Parker, that is a Bengal tiger. And tigers are cannibals. What's the English? They eat humans, right? Basically, they feast on. So the goal, Richard Parker's goal too was to survive, but it's in opposed to, like, his surviving would likely make Pi dying because he would eat Pi. So Pi had to ensure that he survived. That was it. And I think what stood out for me in the movie was maybe about the perseverance of humans. That was what I think I noticed. One of the things I liked, the fact that because I don't think I have a strong feeling if I was stuck with a tiger, I would have been eaten at that very first day. But this person lived with a tiger and then stayed on water and this over 53 days and they survived. So I like the idea that the human body, the human mind can persevere and survive anything. And what made him survive was even the tiger too, like that fear instilled a healthy sense of it's not me that will die here today. So I think I really love that.
Yeah.
Okay, those were the three. Yeah.
Yes, and I think why I really like the example you picked, it also shows the fact that an antagonist does not have to be a bad guy. Because I mean, the tiger was just being a tiger, right? So when we focus on like what the antagonist needs or what the antagonist's goal is versus having an antagonist being a bad guy, it's easier for the audience to empathize with the antagonist. That's why you see some movies where you even end up rooting for the bad guy because you are able to put yourself in his or her shoes and get why they are who they are. Thank you, Essay. Does anyone else want to go?
Okay. I picked them. Don't laugh, Moana. I like Moana very much. Okay, let me stop talking about how much I like Moana. Go straight to the point. Yeah, so the protagonist is Moana. Her goal was initially to go beyond the reef, but at some point, her goal was escalated when she now had to restore the heart of Tafiti. So it wasn't just about going beyond the reef anymore, but she had to restore the heart of Tafiti. And there were like a series of antagonists, not just one. And we had the coconuts that wanted the heart, the crab, the giant. Then we had Taka, the major demon. What really stood out for me was that at the end, it turned out that Taka, that was supposed to be the worst antagonist, turned out to be the Tafiti that they had actually been looking for all the while. So for me, that was really, really a nice twist to it. So that the major antagonist turned out to be what Wadula is now. the solution that they had actually been trying to bring all along.
Yeah. So for Moana, I think there was something I actually wanted to talk about. I think I should talk about it now. Layers of conflict. So like I said, for you to have drama, there has to be conflict. And so in building layers of conflict, we have internal. Internal is where I am in conflict with myself. So a very obvious example is I'm a young single woman who says, oh, I want to settle down, I want to marry, and then I go and fall in love with a man who is married and is not about to leave his wife for me anytime soon. So we see the conflict between my head wants this, but unfortunately I have fallen in love with someone who will never give me what I want. So he is not the antagonist. I am I am my own antagonist, but again, I'll say let's have, as much as possible, avoid stories where our overarching or our main antagonist is yourself, because it then means that there are some conflicts that we cannot externalize. The second one is personal, where it's me versus you. The third one is social, where it's me versus the world, so to speak. So a lot of movies that talk about, there's a word I'm trying to look for. Targeted violence. So movies about racism, movies about being queer or something, basically being queer in a largely heterosexual society. You can think of Brokeback Mountain, where even though they had people who were antagonists, it was a societal antagonism that had people representing the society. We then have nature. So I think Moana falls into that, where it was basically her versus what seemed like, a force of nature that was an antagonist. And then we have the metaphysical. Metaphysical is when you're talking spirits, ET, and all of that. But the most important conflict for us, interestingly, is the internal one, because as much as we don't have the luxury of always seeing a character having a monologue and saying, oh, I want this, but oh, I would rather do this. It plays out in the way they interact with other people. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Choma. If we can have a third one. Welcome, David. You're asking what you missed.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, this is Dr. My name is Dr.
Oh, I'm saying David Akindele. No, I'm talking about the chat, not you. Hi, Dr.
Okay. Yeah, so the movie, I picked this movie, Rumor Has It, season 3. So the protagonist is Toju, and the goal is just to survive, like she lost two of his wives, and so now his major goal is just to survive and run his business. And unfortunately, my antagonist is Deda, and is a bad guy. So Deda thought Toju killed her sister, not knowing that her sister died because of her health issues. And what stood out to me about the movie is the suspense and the story, the writing line. But actually, I don't actually like the end part. But yeah, so the suspense. Thank you.
Okay. Rumor Has It. Is it that TV series from? Is it Ndani or Red TV?
Yes, Ndani TV.
Ndani. Okay. I haven't seen it, so I'm not. But it sounds interesting, though. I've always wanted. There is season 3 now.
Yes, there is.
Okay. That means I can catch up. Thank you so much. Again, I like that in all our 3 examples, we've had antagonists who weren't just bad guys for being bad sake, So thank you. The reason I needed us to do this task is because we're going to go into we're going to go into pitching your story. And so when you are a writer, it's not so back to the question, TJ, you were asking me about why you needed to have those things in place. I was also thinking about it during the break, and it's also because when you are pitching a series, beyond how interesting it is, the person you're pitching it to is also thinking of what would this cost versus what would it pay. I can't remember the economic terms, right? But if I am pitching a story in a novel form, right? So again, with a story, you also have to have like characters with conflict and goals and desires and all of that. But the main difference is if I'm pitching a novel, it's mainly the publisher putting my words to paper and, you know, well, the large business behind publishing that I do not know about. But with film, they are thinking in terms of how much is it going to cost me to actualize what you have said. So if I'm pitching a story where people are jumping from helicopters and monsters are coming out of the water, it better be good. Because the person is thinking, if I'm going to pay to have all of this happen, then I better have the returns, basically the cost of production costs. Thank you, Choma. So yes, so now we're going to making money from your work. With art, I first have to say there isn't any manual to say, oh, if you do A, B, and C. I think with everything generally, right? But the first thing you want to have before you start scripting, unless you have funding ready, or unless you just want to script for, you know, just to have it, you want to pitch your story before you start scripting. That is also because when you pitch, there are some things that whoever is commissioning your story may want to influence, right? So when you have your story, you know who your protagonist is, you know the journey they're going to go through, you have the crisis. So all these things we've talked about in terms of like our story structure is largely how we're going to have a plot that moves so that one thing leads to another and another and another. But if I am going to pitch my story to, let's say, oh, kind of like how apparently the person that pitched Power ran into 50 Cent somewhere and then she pitched her story and then he commissioned it, brilliant. So if you are going to find yourself in a situation, there are people who organize pitching sessions. I always advise upcoming writers to take advantage of networks and communities. So you want to follow the Charles of Play, who thankfully most times when he's making a film, he does an open call for script writers. So that's a good way to get a leg in. You want to follow, I feel like this is something I would have wanted to say towards the end, but I might as well say it now that we're talking about pitching. You want to follow people like Nkiru Njoku, who has been the head writer for Tinsel for a very long time, but she has left. But for every time Tinsel took new writers, it was an open call. And for most of people who are, people like me, who are in the writing space for African Magic, we got in through Tinsel. So a lot of the series would not openly recruit, but Tinsel was basically like a very easy way to get a leg in. You want to follow people like Emil Garba, who is very helpful with, you know, posting opportunities on his Instagram and stuff. You also want to consider emailing people, contacting people. I remember I used to send like random emails to people on Twitter and on Facebook, basically saying, oh, I'm a writer, I want to, you know, I want to work with you. And it's not just saying, oh, I am a brilliant writer. We all know how important it is to sell yourself, but we also know how important it is to sell yourself when people do not know you yet. So a lot of what I was doing was, can I assist in what you are doing? Can I be part of what you are doing? I remember like my first, so what would have been my first break was when I reached out to, yes, Kemi Adesoye. She has written, I think she was the head writer for MTV Sugar for season 4. She has done a lot of writing. She's a writer of figurine. Yeah, so, and then she's also very warm and welcoming. So basically just find those people in the writing space, follow them, contact them if you can, and if you can do it well in a way that it doesn't put them off. So I think that's like the best way I can advise you to get a leg in. And then also well, let me not go ahead of myself. I was talking about communities and I'll get back to that. So with pitching, what you guys have just done, you basically pitched to me someone else's story. So you've told us who the protagonist is, you've told us what the protagonist wants, and you've told us what you like about the story. And if you're pitching your story to someone, that is basically what you are doing. So there's what we call the 5-finger pitch. So these are 5 fingers. Before you go into your 5-finger pitch, I'll type it, thank you. Before you go into your 5-finger pitch, you know the story well. And as much as possible, there's nothing that surprises you about your story. I always say that writing is like, I mean, I don't think it's a statement that is unique to me. Writing is like being God of a world that you have created. You technically know the end from the beginning, right? So you are not pitching a story that there are some details about it that are still not clear to you. So before you pitch, you have written your story in freight tag, you know your points of attack, crisis of threat, and all of that. And so you're pitching to someone. And so your middle finger, which is like maybe the smallest detail of the story, is the genre. Is it romance? Is it rom-com? Is it action? Is it thriller? Then your second finger is who is your main protagonist. You don't have to tell us the name. Just tell us who the person is and what the person is about. And you are being careful again to not have a perfect character, because nobody likes a perfect character. It's the same reason why, maybe it's just me, but the same reason why we did not like the girl that was perfect in school. So yeah, nobody likes a perfect character. We want to see a character who is flawed, who we can empathize with, who we can relate with, you know. The third thing, that's for our third finger now. Our third finger is, what's the protagonist's goal? What does the protagonist want? And it has to be something that we care about because we care about the protagonist. The fourth thing is, what are the obstacles our protagonist is going to face? I'm trying to think of random off the top of my head. So let's say, oh, it's the rom-com, our protagonist is a young, wealthy man who comes from a very poor background. His main goal is to buy a house or buy an estate, or, you know, let's say buy an estate, because if he's a wealthy man, then it has to be a large scale. What are his obstacles? Maybe government rules, but we know that all those things are not the obstacles in themselves. They are obstacles in how they're going to frustrate this character, who we know has a flaw, or who has, an inner need that he wants stability, right? So if we have somebody who is just building an estate for building's sake, if government comes and says, oh, we're going to put that red thing and say stop building, nobody cares. But if we understand this character enough to know that this house building is tied to an inner woundedness, then we care about it. So now what is important, that is, we're going to our thumb now, which is like the fattest part of the fattest finger, I mean, for most of us. What is important is, again, if we're saying there is no story you want to tell that hasn't been told before, what is important is you saying, so you've heard this story in a million different ways. You've heard 1,001 versions of this story, but this is why you want to tell mine. This is why you care about mine. So yeah, Chomas, okay, I think you guys can see it, so I don't need to read it. I'm going to go with the example of Moana, right? So if I had like money somewhere and Choma comes and tells me about the story, the first thing is, we've watched a lot of movies about human versus the world. We've seen Journey to the Center of the Earth, Jurassic Park, we've seen all of that. But Moana is different because we find that what is actually the antagonist is kind of, I don't want to say the protagonist, but it's kind of the person she has been trying to save. Or I don't know, but you get that this is a different take to the classic man versus the world story, right? So think of so I'm going to use the classic fairy tales we know. So let's say Cinderella, right? And you have to pitch, we've watched, I feel like every year there's a new Cinderella story. But then what was most, So now imagine you're pitching a story and our story is about this girl who comes from this family and all of that and all of that. Brilliant. Or you can come and say, oh, my story is a twist on Cinderella's story. It's about this guy who grew up with a wicked stepmother and everything, and he's trying to, meet the princess. And you go through that. And by this point, the person you're pitching to realizes that, okay, this is Cinderella's story in male form. But then when you get to your fifth finger, you're saying what makes this story important is the fact that it switches gender roles as far as, do I say, pursuing love is concerned. Another example is The Princess and the Frog, where, we know what happens in The Princess and the Frog, but then we watch this one where the princess kisses the frog, and instead of the frog to turn into a prince, she turns into a frog. And so immediately we know that, okay, this is why this story is different, is the fact that it doesn't tell the typical, beauty, coming into your glory, love and light. I think it's also kind of like what Shrek did for us, So yes, there is that. So it's basically, what is the genre of your movie? Who is the protagonist? What do they want? What are the obstacles? And why is your story important? I'm going to send materials, and I hope someone can give me an email, a list of emails of everyone, so I can send this to them. Yes. So when you have that, I usually advise that we have two different kinds of pitches. We have the 1 minute pitch, which is your classic elevator pitch, and then your longer one where you can afford to go into more detail, and that's let's say 15 minutes. You have to be careful that you are not pitching a series of events. Oh, so he went to the farm and then a snake bit him and then he went to the hospital, because your audience is going to zone out quickly, because it's basically you narrating a story that is meant to be visual, right? So you want to you're basically picking out these 5 things and expanding on them. So the reason I say have a 1 minute pitch and a 15-minute pitch is when you don't want to go into a 15-minute pitch and halfway they tell you, oh, they need to go, because you are worried that they do not know how it ends. Well, not really how it ends, but they do not know the full picture of what you're trying to say. But if you give them a 1 minute pitch and then you finish that and then you see that, okay, they have time, and you go into your 15-minute pitch, if they have to go, you know that, okay, at least you have given them a broad picture and they have something to think about when they are away. So this is also a good time to talk about your log line. Your log line, to me, is a representation of how well you understand your story, because you're basically going to distill your entire story into 2 sentences. And so also think of your log line as basically how your film introduces itself to potential audiences, right? So if you want to do a classic freight tag arrangement for your story, you have your protagonist, you have your log line first. So your log line is basically, so I want to refer to Choma's example. A dismissed soldier finds himself face to face with the person who caused his downfall, but now they must work together to resolve a national threat. That is a brilliant example of a log line, because it gives you enough information to want to watch the movie, but not so much that you no longer need to watch the movie, which is also why trailers are important, right? You know, they just give you important aspects. If you're going to show somebody dying in a trailer, it better be necessary, because for people like me, if I'm to watch a movie and I can see that almost this person is already going to die, I probably will not want to watch it again, right? So it's knowing the information to give out and information to withhold, even when you are pitching. So let's say I'm going to say, oh, a family tries to rescue their kidnapped mother, and then in the process they call the police, and in the process, I don't want to go into those details because I mean I've already removed the element of wonder as far as that pitch is concerned. What I want to say is a family tries to rescue their mother who has been kidnapped, but in a series of unfortunate events or in a series of, you know, chaotic events, they realize that there's more at stake. They wonder if, you know, they find themselves at odds with the government and stuff like that. So you want to sell your story, basically. So you have to know what to say and what to withhold. You have to know how to whet the appetite of these people. So I feel like that is that for pitching. I've talked about pitching. I've talked about important communities to join, people to follow. There's also, do I say, the importance of a short film? A short film is very important because it is the one way you can showcase your work to a large audience. So it's not a rule that you have to make a short film before you can, you know, make it, right? But it's helpful because it's very low budget. People have made short films on their phones. People have made 1 minute short films. It's something you can make with a cast of maybe 1 or 2 people. So it's also easy to use to build your portfolio if you want to, you know, start pitching. And if you make a very successful first short film, you might also find people reaching out to you. And you know that if they are the ones reaching out to you, the game is different, really, because they are coming to you because they know what you can do. So as a side note, difference between writing for television and writing for film. This is all I need to talk about before we go into scripting proper, right? When you're writing for TV and you're writing for film, the main difference is a film is like a broad arc of 3 acts, beginning, middle, end. But when you're writing for TV, TV is many smaller beginnings, middle, and ending. Whatever. So if you're going to tell a story in a film, you have like, maybe an average film is like 90 minutes. And so we all know that if you're writing with final draft, 1 page is 1 minute. So let's say 90 pages, right? So by the time you get to, say, page 50, 60, you are like in the heat of the story, right, for a film. But for television, you have, say you're writing a series that has 10 episodes. Each episode, the series in itself has to have a beginning, middle, and an end. But inside those ones, the episodes also have beginning, middles, and endings. Now, if you want to also factor in things like ad breaks, so that means in, say, season 1, episode 1, I have beginning, middle, and end. Inside that episode 1, I also have to have, let's say, you know what we call ad breaks, right? So let's say you're watching a movie, a TV series, and just when the bad guy breaks into their house, they go on ad breaks. That in itself is a cliffhanger. So you have major cliffhangers and minor cliffhangers. So the main difference with writing for TV is knowing how to contain your story or compartmentalize your story, so that even though it's going to be a long stretch of story, inside that you also have smaller compartments of stories. I think that's like the most important thing to note with writing TV versus radio and TV versus film. I mean, there's also the thing about characters. You have to pay attention to what characters are saying from beginning to the end. So things like consistency, right? So if you're writing for, sorry, I mean continuity. So if you're writing for television, for film, you have to pay attention to continuity, yes. But the burden is a lot heavier with writing for TV because of the amount of time it has to span as well. So I'll give an example. So there was this show that my friend worked on, and one of the characters had a tattoo on his back. So in episode 1, the tattoo was on his the left side of his back. And because, I mean, I don't want to say this is a difference. I don't want to make it about TV film. I think it was just about someone that did not pay attention to their assignment. But by the time they got to episode 20, the tattoo had shifted to the right. So you also want to pay attention to those kinds of things where if there is a detail that is not extremely crucial to your story in TV, leave it out so that you don't start something that's going to cause issues with continuity, because it's easier to follow up with film than with TV. So that's that. So now for formatting your script, now we're talking about the script writing proper. I'm trying to see if I can share my screen so that we're all looking at the same script as we go. Let's see.
I'm sorry, we lost Aisha temporarily, but she's back with us.
Yeah, I'm back. I had to quit to implement my changes, so yeah. Okay, so do we see what I'm sharing?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. So first of all, the main app that you want to use is Final Draft. Final Draft basically automatically formats your script for you, so you don't have to pay attention to things like border width and all of that. But I'm just going to run through the main elements of the script. So one more thing you need to know before you start writing your script, this is like the last thing I'm going to say, is the beat sheet. But you can also just we also just call it like your breakdowns. So if you're going to have a film that has 60 scenes. Before you start final draft, you need to have a list of all those 60 scenes and what is happening in all those 60 scenes and the characters that are going to be in those 60 scenes, right? So that breakdown is like basic, those beat sheets are basically like summaries of every scene. What that helps you do is, like what I said about having empty scenes or scenes where nothing is happening, you pay attention to, so let's say in scene 1, you say, oh, Aishat and TJ get into a fight. But beyond it being about the fight, what does that thing achieve is that it creates discord between Aishat and TJ. So that is what that scene is doing. If we have to see another scene with Aishat and TJ getting into a fight, it cannot be just for the sake of them fighting. It has to push the story forward. So basically your beat sheet helps you look at like the broad picture before you then go into smaller pictures, so that if there's any scene that is useless, you can take it out immediately. If there's any scene that is repetitive, you can take it out immediately. If there's any scene that is happening in a location that you do not have, you can find a way to move it to a location that you do have. When I say locations that you do not have versus locations that you do have, if you're writing for a TV series, for example, by the time they commission you to start writing, you are going to have already given them a list of locations that you would need. And so once they agree to those locations, you kind of have to stick to those locations. So you cannot suddenly have someone in a hotel. You can, but it has to be absolutely necessary, right? So if they are going to have to get a hotel for just that scene, it can't just be for the fact that they're going to quarrel. It has to be important. So yeah, that is that. So back to what I'm sharing. This is our scene heading. Your scene heading has 3 main parts. This, which states if it is an interior location or exterior. This, which tells us the exact location. You use this slash if it's a place inside a place. So it can be interior Aishat's house, bedroom, interior Aishat's house, bathroom. I feel like a lot of us already know this, but I'm just going to run through it for the sake of us that don't. And then time of day. Broadly, we have morning, afternoon, night, dawn, and dusk. But if you want to be like really deep about it, some people actually put time of day, 7:05, 10:05, whatever, if you want to do that. Now, the next line puts in bracket the characters that are going to be there. That is also useful for, I think from my experience working with Africa Magic, it's largely useful for paying characters. So it's easy for you to just see how many scenes this character features in, and you know how many scenes you're going to get paid for. So that's scene heading, characters, and then action. Action is basically, as at the time we come into the scene, what are the characters doing? Now, we don't have to have like a big action for every scene, right? So in this scene, again, because it's like the first thing we are seeing, we have to, there's no rule. I mean, you can start your scene with darkness, dialogue, or you can start your scene with 2 people talking dialogue. You can even start your scene first with dialogue before we see the characters. It's really up to you. But yeah, action. Now, the first time you see a character, they have to be in capital. Well, I don't want to say they have to. It helps if they're in capital, again, because it helps production to track characters across your story. What he's doing, his pacing, you have your character, and then this is basically the character that is speaking, and then this is the dialogue. Here you have what we call parenthetical, because it's not an action per se. It's basically usually you use it as a direction for how dialogue should be delivered. So if I'm saying get out, and you put it in brackets, do I say, okay, no, maybe I shouldn't say get out, because get out on its own is a very cold, it's a very cold thing to say. So let's say I am saying someone knocks on the door and I'm saying, come inside, right? If I put in parentheses and I say grumpy, I'm basically saying, come in. Or I'm saying sing song, I'm like, come in. Or I say distracted, I'm like, yeah, come in. So the actor has an idea of how they're going to deliver the lines. The other thing you use parentheses for is if they want to, is if it's a micro action inside a dialogue. So it can be someone knocks on my door and it's in bracket while filing her nails. So we know that I am saying that as I am doing this. You use it for like micro action so that you know that, okay, you are talking and delivering, you are delivering, you are doing the action and you're delivering the lines. And so that is that. Typically, oh yeah, there's a rule that I broke. When you're starting your script, you want to start with fade in, and it's like on the left-hand side, and then you have this, and so you go through your script. It also helps with, so this is one thing that I've just projected. Like a few things that help is that on the average, especially for TM, for film, generally for both, you want to keep your scenes, you want to have it in mind that, okay, how long is a scene? So you want your scenes to be like maybe 2-3 pages long. So you don't have a scene that 5 minutes later, the audience is wondering, when does this scene end? Of course, there are exceptions to this rule. Classic example is Inglorious Bastards. Is it the first scene? The scene where the guy comes to look for the Jews and then they are seated and then there's this very drawn out confrontation. It was long and we loved it. And that was because they knew what they were doing. They knew how to pace it. They knew how to use their words. They knew how to use their silences. And so as much as you want to keep it in mind that you don't want to have scenes that drag on for too long, I am saying that if it has to, then let it drag, as long as you are delivering what needs to be delivered. So you also have transitions in between scenes. You can have, you don't have to put transitions in between every scene, but let's say if it's a flashback, you want to say cut to, back to, and fade out and all of that. But that is if it is necessary. Otherwise, you can just flow, flow, flow and go. I think I have gotten to the end of like the formal aspect. I want to stop sharing my screen now. Okay, yeah, I want to stop sharing my screen now. So after this, I want to take questions and answers. I have a few tips I want to share. They're just random things that I have picked up along the way. So yeah, we can start with questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, let me start. Yes, please. Is there a place where we can access scripts? Because you were saying, when I asked if we could become better screenwriters by watching movies, someone also added that also reading a lot of scripts. So how can we access these scripts?
So it's part of the resources I would share. Now, there was like this big bank of scripts. It was called the Blacklist, where you could read scripts and download, and it was legal. But as at the time I was creating notes for this, I found that I had been taken down. And so, I mean, there are others that mainly give excerpts, but I think Blacklist was the one that gave you full scripts. But yes, I will share that with you. So yeah, there are. Yeah, Cynthia, the website.
Okay, can I ask?
Yes, please, TJ.
Okay, I was going to ask. I mean, before. Oh yes. I just remembered. Actually, there's this. If you've watched this Lovecraft County, and if you've liked it, the screenwriter Misha Green, she made her scripts available for free also for each episode. If you go to her Instagram, on her Instagram page, she linked them. Each episode, as each episode was coming out, she was releasing it for free. So I think it should still be there. Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, so I know that
Thank
some
you.
screenwriters do live, especially black ones, they do live free material. But I was going to ask, I know that we were asked to submit excerpts of our, or some 2 scripts that we have written in the past. And I submitted an advert script I wrote and then a stage play. So, but I don't know if you went through them and if you were going to comment on anything or give.
So I would
I know
rather
there's no time
do
for that.
that. I felt like it would be easier for me to give feedback personally because of the time we had. So yeah. So yeah, I'll get back to you.
Okay, yeah, and I put my email, so looking forward to the materials and the feedback, everything. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
TJ, is that ymail.com?
Yes, it's Ymail. Yes.
There is a ymail.
Yes, yes.
Because I mistakenly type ymail sometimes when I'm sending my email to people. And I'm like, oh, why does that keep happening? So it really exists. Maybe the
It
university.
always has.
I didn't know. I'm just knowing.
Yeah, does exist. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. Any more questions?
And the final draft app. Sorry, the software. I'm sorry, I have to get out of here as much as possible. Wait, how can we access it? I know that it is not free. I don't know if there are alternatives to the final drafts. How do we get this?
There are not
From
alternatives that I would recommend. Because final draft is like the easiest thing to use, but I feel like it's just to get to their website. I don't know that it's that expensive. It's not like, I don't know how the exchange rate has affected it now, but at some point it was like 20K for a year or so.
Okay, I mean, okay, if you say so, tall, yeah, that's fair. 20K for a year sounds
Celtex
fair.
mobile is free. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, it's just that most people ask you to use final drafts. I know Ebony Life is also doing a current open, and they sort of opened their doors, their partnership with Sony recently. And one of the requirements is that your script submitted should be with final drafts, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I feel like besides the fact that most people request for it, because I know that the first script I was asked to write, she specifically said, the person that asked me to write specifically asked for final draft. And I also find that when I've compared ease of use, it's easier to use. I have found it easier to use final draft. So yeah, I would recommend final draft. Do we have any other questions? Or do I go to?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So normally, if you decide I want to write a book or a play or whatever, in your head, even if I know you recommend having a structure before you start scripting.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you clearly.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Is it clearer?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So my question is this, right? For like your creative process, do you have an idea of a story? You dump the story, then you build your structure before you now script the story? Or do you already just build like a template and then as the spirit leads, you start imputing into it? How does it work? Because I know there are situations where people, like you hear someone say, oh, I have a novel, but I want it to become a script. So in my head, that's already a prepared product.
Oh, sorry, I don't know if it's me. Am I the only person having issues hearing essay?
No, I can't hear her either. I think she's.
I can't hear her either. Yeah,
okay,
I can't
my
hear her.
network.
Maybe you can type your question in the chat.
Okay, so does someone else want to go? Because I think we still have my final session will take maybe like 10 minutes. So I think we still have some time for questions if you have.
I have one more question. And I think it's a very important question. It's about billing, how to bill like payment rates for your script, because in the creative industry, people don't talk about or want to talk about how much things cost. or how much we should pay, or we pay for this script. So as an entry level script writer, what rates do you charge? I mean, these people know how much it's supposed to cost, but they always act like, and they'll ask what would you like to be paid, and I find it daunting all the time. So what for an entry level script writer, what do you, if you want to share, if you feel generous enough to share, how much do you think we should charge? Like,
Okay.
so for like with episodes, for example, and then in
Yeah.
90
So,
minutes
so while you were
and then
asking, I was doing I was doing the math on my phone.
yeah.
Mm. So my first, do you want me to give you in terms of like
Naira
how
or
much
dollars
per
is fine.
page?
Anyone.
No, I'm saying, do you want me to give in terms of how much per page, or like how much I have been paid for what I have done?
Okay.
I
I
can
mean,
give
I think
you.
either is fine. Both of them is actually fine. I know
Okay, so
that
let me
probably for TVs will be different. TV's episodes will be different from movie,
film.
scripts, and different from short films
Yeah,
also. So
yes. So for I think the lowest I have been paid for a TV series that is like 30 minutes. So we are thinking 25, well, let's say
okay.
22 pages, but we factor in ad breaks and all of that. The lowest I've been paid is 40,000 naira, and the highest I've been paid is 500,000 naira. So
Okay.
it's like a very wide, it's a very wide range. So most times I also say you have to factor in who is, so like with international companies, of course, they pay higher,
Yeah.
but then with local, but then, okay, yes, but then so like when I'm giving price, when I'm advising people for the rates, when for like beginner, I also factor in, okay, this is the lowest I have been paid, 40,000. But it wasn't just 40,000 for 40,000 naira sake. It was 40,000 naira because I was writing on a very long stretching series, right? So I am thinking I'm being paid 40,000 naira, but I'm going to be on this series for 2-3 years. So it's
Okay.
thinking stable income. I'm thinking
Oh.
you have to factor all of those things, right? So this is just the flat rate. Okay, think, okay, 40,000 naira, but then how much, how many scripts am I writing? If they're commissioning you to write just 2 episodes, it has to count per episode,
Yeah.
Cynthia. It has to count. If they are commissioning you, so let's say they're commissioning you to write the entire series, you also have to factor those things in, and then you also have to factor how much know-how you are bringing in. So I
Yeah.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it helps. And before you go to another question, how does co-writing a script work? I see at the end of some TV series or movies, you see that there are 2 writers. So if you and I were to work on write a script, we are credited at writing a script. How does it work practically? What does it mean when
Okay,
2
so
writers,
basically
script
it
writers?
means that say we, if we're going to start from like the very beginning, we probably both pitched the story, and then we worked with elements of both our stories to develop our beat sheets and breakdowns. I might have done that solely, and then you joined me at the point of just scripting. But if I'm going to co-write, it means that maybe I wrote episode 1 and you wrote episode 2 and I wrote
Okay.
episode 3. That's like the easiest way to co-write. We take different episodes and write. I think another way people do it, so say we're both writing and you are stronger with writing action sequences and I'm stronger with writing romance. I could, in an episode, write maybe scene 1, 5, 10, whatever, that is romance. And then you could write scene 2, 3, 4, and all of that, that is action. And so that is 2 people collaborating on 1 episode.
Okay. I have one more question, but I'll allow you to go to the other person before. Yeah.
So Esther, your question is, in my creative process, do I write the story structure then script? Do I write the story structure then script? Yes, I do that because besides what I said about like you don't want to get into scripting and then you realize that there are some things, it also helps. It also helps you because once you are thinking about it when you're thinking about it in terms of like the structure, it helps you know your character better. It helps you ask yourself, why is this character doing this? Is it worth it? And if it isn't, you can go back to the drawing board and, rework.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to make a contribution regarding the money matter that TJ asked about. So TJ, what I will say is that I agree with everything Aisha has said, but what I want to add is that sometimes in the beginning, don't be in a hurry to be paid exactly what other people are being paid. People that have been there for quite a while. You have situations where you could all be writing the same series, and the so-called professionals, let me use that word, are being paid more than you are getting paid per episode. But be patient. Just take it that way. It's a good opportunity for you to get your work out there. So sometimes at the beginning, it's not just about please don't accept anybody that tells you 2,500 naira per episode. Because there are some people that are that,
Yeah,
that
I've sold
bold.
my script for
But
500 naira before.
yeah, sometimes yeah. Okay,
TJ,
so
give me the
sometimes
look that
it's
we are
about
all
getting your work
giving.
out there first.
Yeah. Hello, Chama.
So sometimes it's about getting your work out there first. Then after that, you can put your feet down and start insisting on certain things. So I just wanted to mention that. So sometimes you might find situations where you're being paid like half or 3/4 of what other people are being paid, and they're telling you you're new. Just ignore them, and yeah, after the first one, they can't tell you you're new anymore. So that's it.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I mean, sometimes I even tell people that if it gets down to it, if you're a new writer, you have to pay attention to the credits you are getting versus the money you are being paid. Because once you have that credit as a writer, you have it. Nobody's going to take it from you. So yes. I feel like I've not heard anything from some people here. I mean, if does one more person want to say something, or should I just go straight to? Should I go straight to my tips? I think I should.
Yes, but screenwriting and I've heard that there are different kinds of scripts. I don't know that you have encountered this in production, but I hear that the script writing you do is different from screenwriting, which is still different from. I hear that there's a script for movement of camera also, and there's also a script for action sequences. I don't know if this is true,
Yeah,
and
so
that you
that's
as
it.
the screenwriter are supposed to work with.
Yeah, so that is where the director comes in. So when you're writing a script, you are aware of the fact that between you and the final audience, there are many people in between. So if, for example, I don't know if you've seen V for Vendetta, that scene where V is talking to, where, what's our character's name? The main character, the masked man guy, is talking to V, and he has that long monologue where he keeps using words that have V in it, right? So now let's say you have written that script and it's beautiful, but then you cast a character who has issues pronouncing all those things. sometimes you might want to adjust the script so that you use words that are easier for the actor to pronounce. It's basically knowing the things you can adjust. So that's why most times on set we have a script supervisor. A script supervisor makes sure that even though you tweak certain things, it doesn't change so much that the story changes at the end of the day. Yeah, so every other thing outside of the action sequence, that's for the director to, but then it's out of the script you have written that they then bring out those things. So tips, one, pay attention to dialogue and action. You don't want to have one character just talking, and then they're not moving. I think it also goes to the rule of how long should dialogue be. There's I don't want to say it's a rule, but there's a guide to say, okay, a character shouldn't deliver more than 3 to 5 lines at once. If the character has to deliver more than that, you have to either establish that they are ranting, where it's like, I don't care what you're saying, I'm just going on and on. Or they are maybe delivering a speech, or you have to break it. The other character can interject, even if it's the other character just saying yes, or or continue. That is back and forth. The importance of silences and subtext. Subtext means that there's something that you have communicated to your audience without necessarily saying it. So if, for example, I'm having a quarrel with my husband, I'm not just going to wake up and say, I'm quarreling with you, I hate you, you're annoying. It can be in the little things of, Omo, I've gone to work, if you're hungry, go and enter the kitchen. I have not said that we are quarreling, but the audience knows that this man is on his own. Or things like if I hear that my friend's friend is a thief, the moment she enters my house, I put my phone in my pocket or something. It's those little things the audience knows. And so subtext is useful because it kind of brings the audience into like an inside joke where it's like, I see what you did there and everything. Information dumping is useful, but know how to do it. So I think the easiest example of information dumping is, so let's say I am Aishat, I'm having a conversation with Essie and I'm complaining about the weather. I can complain and complain and complain, and in the space of maybe the entire scene, I do not call her name. So on the script, we see that Aishat said something, Essie said something, but the audience does not know that because I did not say Essie did not say Aishat. So you need to look for those places to organically have them mention each other's name. So that's the easiest way. Another way of information dumping is, let's say you come into Nigeria in 2050 and and everything is well. I mean, the country has grown, we've discovered vibranium or whatever. And so instead of having a character saying, oh, wow, I love this Nigeria that we are living in, we have made so much progress, it's boring. And you know that nobody really talks like that. You want to do information dumping by maybe having a reporter talking, because we know that reporters talk like that. Or you want to have someone who maybe came from the past and the person is asking, oh my God, what has happened and all of that. So you have to look for a way to communicate that information if you must do information dumping to make it believable. There's also something called the rule of 3. The rule of 3 means that things are more satisfying when they happen in 3s. So if you are thinking about making your story progress, you want to think of having it in 3 steps. So example, let's say I just moved into a house and I have issues with my neighbors. So maybe the first thing that happens is I wake up in the morning and someone is playing really loud music and I'm frustrated and I can't sleep and all of that. That is one thing that has happened. Now you want to have it happen 3 times, but you don't want it to be repetitive. So the second time it happens, you probably don't want to use music again. You want to use something else. Or if you want to use music, it has to be music that leads to something else. The same thing I said about 2 things cannot happen. 1 thing cannot happen 2 times if the second thing is not leading somewhere. So maybe the second time the music happens, I go to my neighbor and say, please, can you keep it down? And then the third time it happens, I might just go and disconnect the person's wire or something. So it gives you that satisfaction of things happening in threes without it being repetitive. Third, well, not the third thing, something else is learning how to turn your scenes. Turning your scenes means that if the energy you enter the scene with cannot be the energy you leave that scene with. So if I enter a scene and everybody is happy, that scene has to end with either them becoming more happy or sad. So that also means that if this scene is meant to spoil a character's mood, before that thing happens that spoils the character's mood, you have to first establish the good mood that that character is in. So it's either from positive to negative or from positive to more positive or vice versa. The last thing is paying attention to stereotypes and caricatures. I'm very particular about stereotypes because we do it a lot in Nigerian, maybe not even Nigerian films. I see it happen a lot, maybe not even in Nigerian films. So we do it a lot. And so the thing with stereotypes is that I am not saying don't have a house help that is Calabar. I am saying that if you must have a house help that is Calabar, you have to do two things. You have to create dimension for that character. The character cannot just be a Calabar house help that is just busy being ignorant or having an exaggerated, there's an accent, I don't know the name, I know it's not Calabar accent, but the accent, right? Or if you want to be risky and you want to do that, then I beg you, have a second character who is Calabar, who shows another side of being a Calabar person. But as much as possible, don't even do the stereotypes. Try, because the thing is there's a thin line between stereotypes and caricatures. Or how when you watch a movie and someone has a disability, they make the person a stupid person, right? And this is not even to be politically correct. It is to say that a lot of the time, the audience does not know, the audience might not even call you out for it, but it's not just good storytelling. You can't, I mean, it's like Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean was a caricature comedy, but we loved it. Well, for the large part of it, it worked for us because it wasn't outrightly mocking a particular demographic of, particular demographic. I think another film that made it work is, interestingly, Flatmates. The guy Titus on Flatmates. He's a caricature character, but we love him because we see that there's also depth to him. He gets angry, he gets defensive, he's hustling and everything. So he's not just there being stupid for stupidity's sake. I don't even think he's stupid. He's really likable. So what I'm saying is, avoid stereotypes because there's a thin line between stereotypes and caricatures. But if you want to do caricatures, pay attention to people that have done it so that you can do it well. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for spending 2 hours with me. And so I promise to get all your email addresses and send my notes to you, and also the links for the website and also feedback for the work that you have sent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Augusta, can I leave now? Thank you, Essie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simi.
Okay, Aisha, thank you very much. That was a very, very interesting workshop. Even though I had like a lot of work to do, I couldn't help but listen to everything because I was waiting for the next movie reference. I was like, have I seen that one yet? So yeah, it was very insightful, and I believe that a lot of our audience here, participants, have learned a lot. And yes, please, we really appreciate it if you could give us feedback on the workshop. You can send us an email, or you can also tag us when you post on social media with the hashtag ALITFEST21. Yes, she said she's going to send you emails of the scripts or of the notes she used. Did you script this workshop? Okay, so also I would like you to know that by 2 p.m. we're going to be having another workshop, no, a roundtable session on how can we create Nigeria's bestsellers lists. So it's going to be very interesting. We have journalists, bookstore owners, publishers that are going to be in that session, and I think it's interesting because it's something we've not really discussed before, and I would like to know how that goes on. So, well, we have to call it a day. Thank you very much, Aishat, and everybody who attended today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Still ALITFest.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
I believe we'll know what's going to happen tomorrow and next. So, yes, let's keep on attending and enjoy the festival.
Bye.
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 Bye.